Good morning, everybody. Will Dupree here in the KXAN live studio. Here in just a moment, we're going to be hearing from the City of Austin's Homeless Strategy Officer. She's going to be answering reporters' questions and will likely focus her remarks on the HEAL initiative, which is a new effort being pushed by the Austin City Council to find housing for people in more high-volume, more dangerous areas that are camped outside. So let's take a listen as this gets underway. Again, Dianna Grey, the city's new Homeless Strategy Officer, will answer questions from reporters. So let's take a listen.
Said, I'm going to turn it over to Dianna. So welcome you to the availability. Dianna.
Dianna Grey, Homeless Strategy Officer for the City of Austin here. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us this morning. Very excited to spend a bit of time updating folks on the work that has been done over the last couple of months since our last visit. And I will tell you now that I have been in the position for 3 months. There is still, as you well know, very much a body of work in front of us, but I am feeling very encouraged. And I'd like to, I think, share with you some of the things that have happened in these past 3 months that give me real faith that we are moving forward and making progress. So we, in the last year, received a fair amount of money from the federal government for COVID response. And through those funds, we have pushed dollars into the community that we believe will house over 400 additional people through rapid rehousing. Those programs are now largely up and running. We still have some contracts that are going out, but those will be 400 additional people over and above what we typically are able to do in a year. We have placed contracts on 2 hotels that will eventually provide 140 units of permanent supportive housing. Council has passed the HEAL initiative resolution, which takes a really creative approach to addressing unsheltered homelessness in a humane way and connecting folks to housing. We expect that that will rehouse at least 100 people. And all of that is happening before we roll out the results of the summit that has been going on to address unsheltered homelessness. So we've got great momentum, and we think that we will be able to share with the community some really aggressive goals over the next week or two that will help us further coalesce around our efforts. Finally, I think I want to mention that this isn't just work that the city is doing with its jurisdictional partners. But one of the things that has happened over the last couple of months is that Winter Storm Uri occurred. And that was an extreme challenge for the whole community. But in particular, as you can imagine, it was extraordinarily dangerous for our unsheltered neighbors. So not only did the city very quickly stand up substantial shelter for that population, but many, many individual members of the community and those grassroots groups pulled together to get people out of that weather. And I will tell you that I believe we saved a lot of lives in that effort. And for me, it was really evidence of the real commitment of this community to end homelessness and to provide the resources that our neighbors need to live a dignified life. So with that, I will close and take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me on. So first question is from us here at Fox 7. When will the camp start to be officially moved?
So, Bridget, I think you're referring to the HEAL initiative, which is the first phase of the HEAL initiative, which instructs staff to target 4 encampments where there are some real health and safety concerns. Our overall timeline is to begin implementing that initiative over the summer. We are still in the process of finalizing our relationships with our service providers, who will be doing the lion's share of that work. And so that will determine our precise start date. But I will say that our anticipated timeline would begin over the summer We won't go in and close an encampment immediately. The strategy is that we engage closely with those individuals in the encampment and are able to offer them shelter and permanent housing before that campsite closes.
Awesome, thank you. Next question is from CBS Austin. Is there pressure to show that the city is doing something in advance of the May proposition vote, and will the HEAL initiative do enough?
So first of all, I would say there is no shortage of pressure to address this crisis, and that pressure has existed and should have existed long before the ballot initiative was even on the horizon. And so that pressure is about the number of people that are living on the streets and desperately need housing. The HEAL initiative is an approach that sets us up for a strategy that we believe will have short-term visible change, but is not just about a quick fix, but is about us moving forward and in a very intentional way and in increasing scale, helping people move off the streets.
The next question is from the Texan. The voluntary compliance goal may work for some portion or even a large portion of the homeless population, but there's a very real portion of the population that prefers living where they are now. With a non-punitive approach, how does the city expect to get those individuals to comply and move into shelter?
So I think that there are two issues that you bring up here. One is the perception that there's a substantial population who will not move into housing. And the second is compliance, which is not compliance. We're not going to force anyone into shelter. It is compliance with the designation of certain sites as non-camping areas. So let me address that first, I think. The ordinance as it stands does establish certain areas of the city as non-camping areas, and we've had various versions of that over time. Right now, those areas are limited predominantly to our parklands and to specific areas that have been deemed unsafe for people to occupy. The HEAL initiative doesn't explicitly change the ability to enforce where necessary, but what it does is really redirect us as staff to not rely on criminalization of homelessness in those spaces, but to be really smart about how we designate spaces as non-camping and are thoughtful about the design and use of those spaces to encourage that voluntary compliance. The second piece that I think we hear a lot is that there are people who just don't want to come off the streets. And I think that that perception has not really been tested. We have an extraordinarily long wait list for housing. There is no shortage of people who are ready to move into housing. And very often the perception that people don't want to move off the streets is about perhaps them being unwilling to move into a congregate shelter, which is can be a pretty difficult environment, or that they have not been offered housing that truly meets their needs. And so, you know, I think my sort of response is, let's get everyone housed who's ready to be housed, and then see the evidence of what that purported population is really like, and go from there. But we are far, far from that place right now.
Thank you. This is the next question from KView. The city has already spent millions on addressing homelessness, and many argue the situation has become even worse. What do you say to those folks who do not trust that this new plan will make a difference?
So first of all, I will say that any analysis that anybody has done of our systems, our communities, homeless response system has identified that we are far, far under-resourced to address the issue adequately. So the idea that we have, because we have spent or expended resources in response to this problem, and it is not gone, I think is a real logical fallacy. The monies that are being spent have prevented and do prevent people from falling into homelessness. They have and will continue to rehouse people, and they are supporting people in housing right now with some rental supports and services that they need. So the message here, I think, is that yes, as a city, we need to be very accountable for the good use of those funds. But the reality is we have not scaled up to the level that is needed to really address this problem in the past.
Thanks. Next question is from KXAN. Which 4 homeless encampments do you anticipate being selected? Are there some already identified as causing the greatest risk to health and safety?
So the HEAL initiative identifies in general terms 4 areas of town and 4 profiles of encampments that they would like us to approach. And so those areas are in Northwest Austin, in near East Austin, downtown, and South Central. And the risks that those sites propose are varied. And part of the design there, I think, was for us to look at different sites and understand the different health and safety risks there and how we might address them. So the specific sites will not be made public because it's really important, I think, that we protect the privacy of those folks and are able to work with them closely in an organized fashion. But we will certainly be sharing the results of that work as it moves forward.
Next question is from the Statesman. How many people do you anticipate the shelter being able to accommodate?
So again, I believe that you're referring to the dedicated shelter that we believe will be made available through the HEAL initiative. We anticipate that we will need at any given time probably at least 50 shelter beds to accommodate the folks that we'll be serving through phase 1 of the HEAL initiative. And so we are looking at our options that would give us that capacity. That does not preclude us from identifying a site that has additional capacity.
And we have the next question from KUT. Can you break down the share of housing allocation in this plan? How many folks will be connected to the bridge shelter versus rapid rehousing versus public supportive housing?
Sure. So first of all, I'll say, and I think this is an important clarification, every person engaged through this process will be offered permanent housing. And so initially, the bulk of that probably will be rapid rehousing, but we anticipate that we will identify folks as part of that global population who will need longer-term services through permanent supportive housing. And our intent at this point is to strategically link those folks as openings become available in permanent supportive housing, particularly as we have new programming come online over the next few months. The access to shelter is really on an as-necessary basis. We know that often, even if we're able to offer enrollment in a rapid rehousing program, it may take a little bit of time to locate a unit, to go through the application process, and to actually place the individual. So it's to ensure that there is actually some place for folks to go, to be working with service staff and housing location staff during that interim period.
Next question, we're starting round 2 here. Our question here at Fox 7. Yesterday, you mentioned that all the 4 campsites will be designated as non-camping areas by August or the end of August. Will camping there at that point have criminal consequences, or how does that work?
So at least one of those sites is already officially designated as a non-camping site because it's parkland. The question of overall enforcement and how and when that happens, I think we need to think about on a broader level. So as many of you know, since the beginning of the pandemic, we haven't been endeavoring to follow the CDC guidelines about not moving campsites just to move them. And we are also faced with a scenario in which the Travis County Jail is being very careful about the number of people they actually place in jail because of COVID risks as well. So normally a citation for camping is first of all, is a misdemeanor offense. So again, we have strategies, and our law enforcement exercises discretion always in terms of what enforcement looks like. But we will really be working to promote voluntary compliance. And then we will be, certainly as a community, I think, grappling with what enforcement might look like, acknowledging that the value of counsel that has been expressed is that it shouldn't be a criminal act simply to be poor and on the streets, and that the real solution here is not citation and a court date. It is moving folks into housing.
Next question from CBS Austin. In moving people from an encampment to a shelter or other housing, what steps is the city taking to prevent COVID spread at their destination?
Great, thank you. So when the shelter that we are talking about at this point is non-congregate shelter. And so what that means is that each individual would have a separate space so that they could safely social distance during the pandemic. Now, there are a couple things I think are really encouraging and might give us some additional flexibility going forward and represent some increased, I think, protection against the virus. First of all, we are certainly seeing overall a decrease in transmission rates. And secondly, the availability of vaccine is increasing, and we are beginning to work with our providers to specifically target populations experiencing homelessness or that are in shelters to make sure that we get that vaccine to them. Very often, these are folks with complex health conditions that make them more susceptible to poor outcomes should they contract the virus. So getting that vaccine out there. And then, of course, the best way to socially distance is to have your own permanent housing and your own unit to live in. And so that's our ultimate goal.
Thank you. The Texan has another question. Obviously, the city and the state have been at odds over this issue. Has Governor Abbott's office or any other state official been included in the strategy's development?
So we're certainly communicating with our legislators, our delegation about the planning that Austin is doing. And this, again, is not just the city planning, but as the community at large, particularly in the context of the summit, looks at a strategic overarching plan. State resources are a big part of that. They need to be, and they should be. And so we are looking at and presuming that we will leverage state resources that are available to us and are absolutely open and eager to collaborate with the state.
Next question from KView. Will housing people through HEAL push back people who have already been in line waiting for housing? Please explain.
I think this is a great question. So, I think the difference in prioritization around HEAL is obviously that we're focusing on locations. We do have individuals who are waiting for housing in the community right now, many of whom, frankly, may be in these encampments that we target anyway. However, we are bringing new resources to the table for this effort. So we continue to have the programs that we have had in this community to house people who are on a priority list for housing. In this case, we will be adding both resources and a new strategy for targeting individuals for housing. And the goal really is that over time, we're able to resource our system and to pick up our pace such that both people who are in targeted encampments and those who we know have been in need of housing for a long time are increasingly offered housing on a much shorter timeline.
Thank you. KXN has a question. How much money did you receive from the federal government, and what specifically is that money going toward?
So from the CARES Act, there were a couple of tranches, of course, of CARES Act money that came down last year. And so I may get these specifics right, but absolutely happy to follow up with the concrete numbers. I understand that the money that came down explicitly for housing was thereabouts of $13 million. And we have dedicated almost all of that, I think to the tune of 12 million or so, to rapid rehousing. So very directly to housing resources. and the services that are needed to keep people stable in housing. Rapid Rehousing is a time-limited program, but typically provides folks with some support and some rental support anywhere from a few months up to a couple of years. And then I think also, of course, we are anticipating dollars being received from the most recent American Rescue Plan Act. The resources coming to the city that are explicitly targeted to housing and homelessness, or homelessness, I should say, we expect to be about 11.7 million. Those dollars are predominantly targeted to capital costs for acquisition or renovation of facilities. But as you know, Council has really prioritized this issue. And so they are looking at the broader pot, of dollars that are coming down from the feds in this area to see whether we can leverage those dollars also to move us forward in a really substantial way in a short period of time.
Next question from the Statesman. Do you believe Travis County should be contributing more financially to Austin's homelessness problem?
So it's going to take all of us, and we are eager to partner with Travis County, and there are a lot of conversations ongoing. I'll also say that Travis County does a lot in terms of prevention. We worked closely with their staff at the Palmer during Winter Storm Uri, and we were really incredibly impressed with how good they were at finding placements for folks as they were leaving shelter. So we are absolutely in active conversations with Travis County generally, and in particular around the American Rescue Plan Act funds that they will receive, which are quite substantial. In this case, Travis County will receive, I believe, about $245 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds, while the city's overall direct financial assistance will be around $195 million. So ongoing conversations, absolutely, I think, committed to working with our partner there.
Okay, and this is the final question from KUT. Are there concerns that there may be neighborhood pushback against the bridge shelter like there has been at Candlewood Fleet and at the planned South Austin shelter in 2019? And how do you assuage those concerns?
Sure. I think that very often there are concerns in the neighborhood about a facility being there. We, I think, will be looking at how we've been operating our pro lodges as one example of responsible operation of facilities. And in this case, I think, I want to be clear that we are looking primarily at existing city facilities, so not necessarily a new purchase or a new lease. And one of the things that we're doing as part of our due diligence is to reach out to those neighborhood associations in the immediate vicinity, to talk to them, to make sure that they understand our plans, and to ameliorate any of those concerns that might exist.
Thanks so much. That's it for questions from the press.
And that wraps up our Q&A part. Dianna, do you have any closing comments for us?
I think I am just really anxious to speak again soon as we come out of the summit with both some explicit goals at the community level. And from that, I think then to begin to talk about and share with you what we think some of the concrete plans that the city will have to contribute to that goal, as well as the great work that our partners are doing, the resources that they are bringing to the table, which will be substantial, along with those of our private sector.
Okay, thanks everybody. That concludes our media Q&A, and have a great rest of your day.
Take care, folks.
Thanks everybody for watching. Will Dupree here in the KXAN live studio again. You just heard from Dianna Grey, who is Austin's Homeless Strategy Officer. She was particularly talking at length there about the HEAL initiative, which is a resolution passed by the City Council. And what it will do is it reinstates effectively camping bans in 4 areas eventually, and those people who are living in those areas will be connected with housing here. And she said that that will really get underway more this summer. So again, we'll keep reporting about that. If you'd like to find out more about that particular initiative, reporting is on our website at kxan.com and on the KXAN News app. So please download that on your smartphone if you've not done so already. Once again, I'm Will Dupree. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you back here throughout the day with additional updates. Hope you all stay safe and take care. See you then.